This is Justin.
And this is Haley, and you're listening to The Price of Avocado Toast.
We're a married millennial couple wanting to normalize conversations about money. We want to hear about your highs and your lows,
The do's and the don'ts on your path towards financial freedom.
Toasties, welcome back. We are sitting down with your favorite guest, our co-host, Vee. It has been so long since we've gotten to talk to you, and you're the most gracious human in the world for constantly letting Haley and I postpone and short notice, bounce on our meetings. So thank you so much for your patience, and thank you so much for coming back. We just love chatting with you.
Oh man, thank you for being flexible with my drunken Friday nights when I realize that I can't record. Yeah, I'm super pumped to be here. I'm so excited about today's episode because I know I'm already gonna get fired. I'm already sweating thinking about it. So
I'm really excited to do this. I think we've needed to do a fundamental, basic, Dave Ramsey baby steps, what not to do for a while. So I am stoked about this episode. And that's what we're talking about. So, hey, there you go.
Yeah. And we originally, Vee, did an episode, one of our first few episodes was what are the 7 baby steps? And here's what you recommend. And so it's really funny kind of seeing the evolution of our podcast of when we used to be you should totally do this, to then learning a bunch and being holy crap, I don't know if I do any of this.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Exactly. So sitting down to talk now after having that original episode is really interesting. You just kind of see the evolution of the podcast. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Justin's coworker, who I used to go to high school with, we just were chatting with her at a baseball game yesterday, and she said, oh yeah, I listened to the first 12 episodes of your podcast, and I'm not really a podcast person, so I didn't really keep going. And I was like, well, if you do, listen to the newer ones, because it has really evolved into something else since the first 12.
Yeah, the times they are a-changin'.
They really are.
Absolutely. So today we're having Vee on, you guys, because we're going to talk about Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps. We're going to identify his program for y'all, and then maybe give you our own feedback as to maybe some of the better choices you can make than DR's decisions. Ladies, is there anything else before we want to just dive on in?
I guess I'm really excited for this episode, but we also have the next 3 recordings that we're doing are all going to be pretty intense. Kind of what we've been doing behind the scenes of the podcast, doing our investigative journalism and trying to get these people on has been a challenge. So I'm very excited for just the next few podcasts for your the Toasties. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I think we're really onto something. And just to clarify, this is a what not to do. Dave Ramsey baby steps. This is not endorsing Dave Ramsey's baby steps.
Yeah, this is. If you haven't listened to any other episodes in our lives, we do not endorse Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, if you want that, this is not the podcast for you.
This is not that. Maybe go listen to his or someone else's. Definitely. Okay, so we'll just kind of start out and say that Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps are the financial decisions that he kind of lists out in order that you should follow to get out of debt and have success and build wealth. And he's been living off of these since the 90s. So if you've noticed, even just this year, inflation has changed things drastically. So the 90s till now is, wow, tons have changed. So let's just kind of dive into the first one. I'll go ahead and share, Toasties, that Dave Ramsey's first of the 7 baby steps is he tells you need to save up a $1,000 starter emergency fund before you do anything else. And this is kind of maybe the only time I might kind of agree. And the only part of that I agree with is that you definitely should have some type of emergency fund saved up. The part that I don't agree with is that Dave Ramsey's been hounding this $1,000 idea for, again, over 30 years. And $1,000 gets you roughly nowhere in the United States in 2022. We personally have had multiple emergencies over $1,000 within the last 10 months. So to think that that's going to cover anything substantial with somebody who does not have, extra cash flow or extra money sitting around is wildly tone deaf. And it kind of just shows you how removed he is from the modern story in America.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And and urge people to save an emergency fund, especially before going and starting your debt-free journey. I mean, it's the first part of your debt-free journey, really. And to some people, $1,000 might be a lot of money, but it is a lot of money when you have an emergency and then you go negative or you have to go back into credit card debt. So my advice has always been to save at least 1 month's worth of expenses. But I want you to like hit that 1,000, but keep going. Like, if you feel like you need to hit that milestone to like be okay to pay off debt, that's fine. And I've never like shat upon the $1,000 emergency fund as like, you shouldn't want that, but you should just want more because you can't be secure with that amount of money. I mean, like I'm not recently, thank God, knock on wood. I haven't had emergencies in the past 10 months, but throughout the journey, oh my gosh, like, tires popping, a lot of car stuff always happens. When I owned a home, some shit happened in the bathroom that cost way more than $1,000. Some shit happened in the bathroom. That's funny. But yeah, I mean, like, you blink and it's like $1,000 can be gone. So I don't know. I think that it's very unrealistic. Like you said, like the inflation rate. I mean, I think Sammy, my friend Sammy at A Sunny Side of Life, she did a revision of the Dave Ramsey steps in a YouTube video like a year ago. And I think she said that the $1,000 counting for inflation today would be more like $1,900. So yeah, I know why he sticks to this because it's just his Bible and you can't change the word. But you really shouldn't pay attention to the $1,000. It should be more.
So I would like to ask Justin, what would you say would be like 1 month's worth of expenses? Like if you were to just look at our budget and say, okay, for my starter emergency fund, instead of $1,000, I'll go with like 1 month of expenses. What would those expenses be?
I think that for us, it's definitely variable, but I'm going to be like looking at like the big stuff, obviously like rent and bills. And then I'm going to be looking at making sure like our groceries are taken care of and stuff like that. So at least for us, I would be leaning closer towards probably like 4,500 to $5,000, to be quite honest. Like that's a very slimmed down budget. I mean, our rent is 2,200, so that's a large portion of it. But like that would be probably where I would lean.
I think there's a lot that you can cut when you're looking at like 1 month's worth of expenses. So I think you hit that pretty good with like the basics, the bills, the essentials, food, gas, and then all of the rest of the like subscriptions and stuff. If you ever needed to cancel those, like that's pretty simple to cancel. But I think that was pretty good.
Yeah, it's going to vary wildly depending on your geographic location. Like one would assume that somebody's rent in Colorado or California won't be the same as like Iowa. So like for me, it would be more like 3,500 would be like bare bones. And which I have. I mean, I have 1 month's, I think I have 1.5 months worth of expenses, but that's also because, we don't have kids. We don't own a home. Those are also things that you have to take into consideration too. Like if the roof on our apartment building decides to decay, I don't have to pay for that, So it's going to vary between people. It's not going to be the same for everybody. So that's definitely something you need to take into consideration.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Definitely. So I'm going to hop into baby step number 2. And this is where we hung out for a really, really long time. So baby step number 2 is the debt payoff journey. And Dave Ramsey's approach is the debt snowball. And that's where you list all of your debts from smallest to largest. You pay minimums on everything except for the smallest, and then everything snowballs. And I liked the debt snowball, but there are other options. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So there's the debt snowball, which is Dave Ramsey's, and then there's the debt avalanche, which is basically the same thing where you list your debts from smallest to largest, but smallest to largest interest rate, and then you pay on the largest interest rate first. That one has proven to save money. The snowball is more of like behavior strategy, I guess. And then there's also one that he never talks about. He's mentioned the debt avalanche a few times on his episodes, but he never talks about like emotional baggage payoff, where like if you have something that you absolutely hate and you need that gone immediately, I think that's most important. For example, I have encountered people who are going through a divorce and they still have, or they're already divorced and they're still paying lawyers' fees and stuff from their divorce several years ago. And they're like, I don't want to be paying for this because this is in the past, I'm ready to be done. I have other people that I've encountered who are like, I owe my parents thousands of dollars and it's hindering our relationship. I can't even talk to them because I owe them so much money and it's just creating so much friction. So I think that method, if that is where you're at, is the most important to get your mind clear. And then you can figure out what suits you best. So my recommendation for the debt payoff method is to figure out which one is best for you and your situation. Everyone has their own thought on that. What do you think, Vee?
So when I first started, I did the debt snowball. And I think when I started this journey when I was 22. So I really did need to see those quick wins to be motivated by them. Just because if I didn't see the quick wins, I was going to quit. Like that was who I was then. But at the end of my journey, I switched to the debt avalanche because my student loan interest was so much higher than the car loan interest, and they both had the same amount of money. So I was like, well, I might as well save money on the last two debts. And I think you're absolutely right. I call the emotional debt payoff method the most hated debt method, which is something that I learned from one of my friends at FinCon, which is a personal finance conference for those who don't know. But yeah, I think any one of the methods is fine as long as you stick to it and it's what's best for your family. I think Dave really hounds the debt snowball method because he says it's 80%. What does he say? What's that quote? 80% emotions or habits and 20% math is what personal finance is. And I mean, that's fine, but it's not going to work for everybody. Mm-hmm. So, do what works for you. I don't give a shit as long as you're paying off debt in a way that makes sense and you stick to it.
There's also a really interesting kind of dive into why does Dave recommend the one that changes your mindset? Or why does Dave recommend the one that changes your habit? And obviously we'll dive probably deeper into stuff like that with some of the guests that we have coming up to chat. But like it's a really interesting or fascinating idea of like, why does Dave want to change his listeners' mindsets? Why does he want to have that like emotional connection rather than the numbers connection? It's really fascinating.
Yeah, he just doesn't allow for any movement. It's very like putting on the blinders and only one way. And it's like, oh, well, that's just grooming people.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
And I have some clients who have decided, okay, because I lay out all of these methods and figure out which one each person wants to do. And some people say, well, I think I'm going to start with the snowball and then I'll move to this. Or I think I'm going to snowball only my credit card stuff and then eventually I'll move to like a whole different category. So I mentioned 3 options, but there are others. You could say, okay, I'm going to pay off my student loans first, and then I'm going to pay off my credit card, or I'm going to pay off my house first. Whatever that is for you, if something is on your mind to be paid off, you could do that first. It really doesn't matter as long as you're paying it off. That's what I'm trying to say here. All right, Vee, I think you are baby step number 3. So what is baby step number 3, and what is your suggestion for what people should do differently?
So baby step 3 is saving 3 to 6 months worth of your emergency fund. So 3 to 6 months of expenses. Like I said, this is probably the only baby step I really do agree with. I would say that the only thing that I disagree with is that for some people like us, I live in Colorado, Haley and Justin live in California, waiting to invest, because while you're doing these baby steps, you're not investing at all. Mm-hmm. And saving up, you said $4,500 a month, right?
Yeah.
If you and you have children and rental property and you have all of these responsibilities, right? So if you're going to save $4,500 for 6 months, that's $27,000. How long is that going to take you to save? I just think that it's not realistic for some people. Like it's not going to be realistic for me to wait and save for probably a whole year, if that minimum, probably longer than that, to wait and invest. So I think for people living in a higher cost of living area, depending on your family situation and your assets, 3 months is a better option just because you're not going to want to save all of that money and wait all that time. But again, I just think that you should be investing no matter what financial situation you're in, just because of the compound interest. So I'm a big believer in investing while you're doing all of these steps. And I think that, Dave Ramsey doesn't like to look at situational things. It's just blanket statements. And people really do need to take into account their personal situation when they're looking at these baby steps. 6 months might not be feasible for you. And that's fine. It's not feasible for me, which is why I have like 2.5 months worth of expenses saved in my own account. But I'm always saving that. So, maybe in 2 years, I'll have 4 months, but it doesn't have to be so hard and fast. So while I agree that you absolutely should have an emergency fund and you should bulk up your emergency fund after you have paid off debt, I don't think that you shouldn't not be investing while you're saving that emergency fund. And I think that that emergency fund is going to vary wildly between people and families.
I think this is also similar to baby step number 2 with the snowball. Like, what works best for you and your family? What are you most comfortable with the approach? And with savings, it's the same thing. Like, if you were to just say, okay, 3 to 6 months, okay, I want to do 6 months, and then you do the math, and 6 months is $40,000, and you're like, okay, whoa, that's a bit much. I don't think I need that much money. Why don't you just look at it like, how much money would you be comfortable with? Are you comfortable if you have $5,000 in savings? Is it 10,000? Is it 20? Is it 30? Like, it really, really varies between person to person, family situation, where you live, how many kids you have, do you own a home, and what are your other investments, which is baby step number 4. Like, where is your money being invested outside of that? So you can look at the whole entire security blanket instead of just like the money in savings, if that makes sense.
Vee, do you have your savings in like a particular account? Do you have it in like a high yield savings account, or do you just do it in like your own standard checking savings account?
No, I have it in Ally. I've been an Ally customer for, oh my God, probably 7 years now.
Wow.
I think they're the best online banking option for high yield savings account. It's really important to note that like your money's not going to grow in a high yield savings account. It is just there to sit and be liquid so that you can use it just in case of emergency, which is also another problem I have with baby step number 3. It's like, that's so much money to keep somewhere that's not growing and beating inflation. So the inflation rate right now, I think, is at 7%, if not more. I haven't checked the numbers in the last month. So last time I checked, it was 7%. My Ally high yield savings account is, I believe, at 0.5%. So you're not beating anything. Like, you're just keeping it there to just have on hand. But it still is a better option than the traditional like Wells Fargo, Bank of America at like 0.001% or whatever the hell their non-existing interest rate is.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ally is wonderful, and they have a bucket system, which Toasties, like, it is game changing. You can break out in your savings account different sections, and it's very visual. I love Ally 100%. I wish they would pay me to endorse them, but they don't.
Same. So let's get on that. Ally, if you're listening, please sponsor us. Please sponsor V Frugal Fox and Price of Avocado Toast. We will bring a lot of people to you. We also use Ally, and we love it. And I think my favorite part is that it's out of sight, out of mind. You know, you can we put all of our money from our house sale in Ally when we had, a couple $100,000. I don't want that in my savings account that's attached to my checking account, because then it makes me feel like I have all this money to spend. So we put it completely away.
Yep. And that's also where I put my Rover money. So I have a checking account and a savings account with Ally. So I do like that it's not like my normal accounts. That way, sometimes I go in there once a month and I'm like, oh, that's nice. I didn't know that. Cool. But yeah, out of sight, out of mind is definitely something that I recommend for savings accounts. It's just too tempting when it's in your regular bank.
Yep.
Love it. Okay, so I'm going to move on to baby step number 4, and that is to invest 15% of your income. Now, that's not the part that I disagree with. It's actually to stop investing everything and don't invest 15% until you're at that point. So he says, Stop investing in absolutely everything, in your 401k, up, like everything. And you don't invest until you're done paying off all of your debt and you have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Now, how long did it take you, V, to pay off debt? Like just baby step number 2. How long was that process?
That was 5 years for me.
And then baby step number 3 could be like 6 months to like a year on top of that. So that's
According to Dave
years.
Ramsey,
Years.
Yeah, it would be a year and a half to 2 years for us to save that amount if I stuck with the baby step 3. So that's 7 years.
That's years of missing out on investing. So that is the biggest red flag there. Do not stop investing on your journey. If that means you're not maxing out your 401k, but you're still investing in your 401k, then that makes sense, right? You're not putting in $20,000 of investments and then you're taking that money to pay off debt. Okay, sure, that makes sense. But to just stop completely is such harmful advice. I cannot even believe that exists.
This is the most harmful advice of the Dave Ramsey empire. I have taught, like, so I started this when I was 22, right? Like, imagine people that are starting at 32, 42.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, all that time and compound interest that they're missing out on, it just hurts my soul. It truly does.
And V, you've, I think, done a really good job speaking about this on social media, but modern investing and like the platforms we can use are accessible now for, us plebeians, right? Like it's not just the wealthy that has access to investing. If you don't want to use a financial advisor, you can hop on to any app and they've gamified it to hit the millennial investor that doesn't have much money, that maybe is just putting a little bit each month away, right? And even that is going to do something. And in the DR world, it's certainly going to help change their habits on investing as well. And so it's really unfortunate that he's hung into that advice. Again, it's because the 7 Baby Steps are a well-known platform. His followers can recite them to a T, and so it makes him money. But like, there's no reason to stop investing when you're paying off your debt, even if it's $20 a week, or selling all your stuff in your garage.
Match.
Yeah, like, the free money.
Yeah, and like not only free money, like that's part of your compensation package. Like you're getting paid that money is yours. Like invest it, match it, y'all. Like that is so much money on the table. You work 40 hours a week all year and you're not taking advantage of that. Like your employer is getting away, like with your work, and you're being exploited if you don't use that money. So that is just the most harmful, ignorant advice. And I think pretty much everybody in the personal finance space agrees. Yeah, especially in recent years. I just can't imagine starting later in life in this process and having to wait 7 years to a decade to invest. Like I just think back to my parents who, I grew up thinking that the stock market was gambling and that it was just for rich people, rich white dudes, But now, just like Justin said, it's just so accessible, especially with the influencers in the space giving away so much free information, all the books that you can buy, the apps that you can use. I'm actually going to be sponsored by the Stash app. I have to sign the contract. But it's like, it works like digits. So you make a purchase and it rounds up the amount of money to the dollar, and then you're just investing the extra change. Like it literally is.
That's cool.
That simple. It's just that simple. And you can follow me or Justin and Haley and learn how to open a Roth IRA and learn how to ask your HR about company matches. I mean, this information is out there. And it's really sad that Dave Ramsey doesn't push you learning your own information and making the best decision for you, especially when it comes to investing, because you need to take care of yourself now for the future, because Social Security probably isn't going to be here for us. Yeah. So it's really scary to think if you don't invest.
I'm seeing a turn of Dave Ramsey followers, current Dave Ramsey followers, who are actually now on Instagram saying that you should invest. So everyone is realizing that this is poor advice and we should not be waiting that long, because this could be years, and that is detrimental to your retirement.
Well, think about, how many debt-free screams on the show did we hear that were like people in their 50s. Like V said, you cannot get started then and have enough for retirement to match inflation and everything going on. You simply cannot. And that would be terrifying to try and be jumping in at that point. Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, not such good advice at all. We even looked into our teacher pensions. Like, was it an option to pull out of it? Could we not invest in the teacher pension and just invest in our Roth IRA or something else? Thankfully, California does not allow that. We had to continue investing in our teacher pension. It's required, and they match. I don't know if it's like a percentage or whatever, but Justin has only been teaching for 3 years. He's on his 3rd year right now, and his California teacher's pension has over $20,000. I only taught for 2.5 years, and mine had it has $13,000 in it. So that might not seem like a lot of money compared to like some massive 401k at an accounting firm or something, but that's money we wouldn't have had if we just stopped. So I'm thinking like, oh my God, we don't even think about it because it just comes out automatically. And if you have the option to do something like a 401k or 403b or something like that, it can come out automatically from your paycheck, and then you don't even think about it because it's gone. Okay, V, you are baby step number 5. So can you dive into what baby step number 5 is and what you would recommend to do differently?
Oh, I'm excited that you got this one. I can't wait to hear
I was strategic.
Your lens on this one.
I was strategic.
This is college, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, boy.
Specifically, save for your kids' college.
Well, I don't know how much your toasties know about me at this point in our partnership, but I am a woman who is child-free by choice. I am with my husband of 2 years. I've previously been married, and I was married for 4 years before my second husband. And there are many, many reasons why I am child-free by choice. That doesn't mean that I hate people. Yeah, exactly. Parents laugh when I say that. That doesn't mean I hate kids. It doesn't mean that I hate moms or dads. It's just the choice for me. And Dave Ramsey is just such a traditional life person where, you have 2.5 kids, the white picket fence, the mortgage, and it's just so disgusting to me how just how linear it all is, because that just doesn't reflect the reality for a vast majority of people, especially when we're considering children and building generational wealth and passing it down. So for those listening, you don't have to be a parent to pass down generational wealth. And you also don't have to save for college for your young people in your life. I think that if you want to, as a parent, kudos to you. If I did have children, I would. But I also wouldn't do it in the way that Dave recommends. I think 529 accounts, which are the tax advantage investing account where you can save for your child's education and really take advantage of the interest rate of the stock market. But you can only use that account for educational expenses, which I have a problem with because college is not for every child. And that is very ignorant to assume, especially with the way that schools are set up and the increasing cost of college and just the way that industries are evolving. And so many industries, you don't even need a college education anymore to really make it. I'm lucky in the fact that I do use my degree for my day-to-day work, but there are people that have gone hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and don't even use their degree. So again, it's situational. I don't feel comfortable putting money in a 529 account. I would save for my children in another way. I don't feel comfortable even saying that I'm saving for their college. I have mentioned Sammy before on this episode, and I'm going to do it again. She wrote a blog post that's roughly titled "Saving for Money for Your Kids' College Stupid." And she puts in there how linear this thinking is, how black and white it is, and how, she's saving for her children's post high school life. So that can mean, putting a down payment on our kid's house, or helping them get into a trade school, or paying for weddings, or paying for helping them with a business. And with a 529, you don't have that flexibility. So with baby step number 5, I think it's really great that passing down generational wealth is a priority in the baby steps, but it's just not a priority to be diversified in that thinking, or to even consider family situations that aren't, 2.5 kids in the picket fence.
It's so funny to me how much I've changed my tune on this from the beginning. I was very like, our kids are going to college. They are going to college no matter what, and we're going to pay for it. And now I'm like, well, I have 80,000. It's no longer $80,000, but I had $80,000 worth of student loan debt between undergrad and then grad school, and now I'm using neither of those degrees because I run my own business from home. Sure, it was experience. I'm still a teacher. I got my degree teaching in a different realm, but it's just interesting now because I'm saying you don't have to do that path that they said that you had to do. Millennials were tricked into believing we had to go to college, you had to go to a 4-year college, you had to spend a lot of money on college, take out student loans, and this was going to be the life. And we are now, as a whole generation, realizing that's not quite what it was said to be. So if we could set money aside for our children, like you said, for weddings or down payment on a house or for travel, if I just had thousands of dollars for each of my kids in like their own little account, and when they turned 25, I could be like, hey, would you like to go to Italy for 2 weeks with me? Or would you like me to give you this money so you could buy a car? Or whatever it is. It just would be nice to have that flexibility instead of just having it locked into an account for college when they may not go that route. And you have always disagreed with me on the college thing. And so now I'm joining you because you went to the junior college.
Yeah, I mean, I spent 4 years at the JC figuring out what I wanted to do, and it cost me no money. And then most of my undergrad was paid for, besides like $8,000. And I say paid for as in like it was, I got FAFSA. So I mean, I'm a firm believer in like that idea of like it does not need to be the traditional story anymore, because like you said, yeah, the traditional story isn't adding up for us. Like it doesn't make financial sense. And so how's that going to affect our children is probably just, exacerbated even more. I think it's wildly more important to just be investing for post high school life, like for their adult realm. Like imagine if your parent came to you and was like, instead of $30,000 to go to, this state school, I'm actually going to give you $30,000 as an investor in this business idea, but you're going to be pitching this business plan to me. Like imagine the growth that your child could have if they truly had some business idea that they wanted to go into, and they knew, okay, I can take this risk because this was money that was allotted for me anyways, and my parents were being mindful of that. Like I think that's so much more important than being like, yes, please go take astronomy 101, even though you want to be a communications major or something, or you want to have your own construction business or something. It just makes no sense. It makes zero sense to me. And I'm a teacher.
I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah, right. Like it's like, and that's nothing against academics. Like we have people in our family. My kind of pseudo grandmother, her daughter is a professor of linguistics, like just a massively academic woman who is remarkably brilliant. But like that's such a niche thing, right? Like that space for her students and her colleagues is where they're interested, right? Or what they are fascinated by. But not every human being is there. So let's meet people where they are and structure our finances for our children so that they have options when they get there. And the 529 doesn't really give you options.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest gripe with baby step 5 is just it's just inflexible, and that's just not reality for most Americans. And the fact that, it leaves child free by choice relationships out of the equation completely. And as it gets more expensive to live, more expensive to educate yourself, more expensive to do anything, people are having children later and later in life or choosing not to. And so we really have to change this narrative. So in short, save for the younger people in your life so that they have more options than you did.
Yep. I love that.
Instagram also has been talking about like I'm probably butchering this, but UTGMs or
Hmm. I think it's
what
UMTG.
there we go. And there are other investment vehicles that you can put your money in that's not just for college for your
Yeah,
children.
you can just have a brokerage account.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be locked into something for education. So we're not saying don't save for your children's college. We're just saying that it does not have to be just the 529 or bust.
1,000%.
Are you looking it up? Did I
Oh,
did
yeah.
I butcher that?
Yeah, you did. I did too, though. It's definitely not UMTG. UMGA? UMGA. Yeah, it's the UMGA account.
UMGA. There we go. Perfect.
There you go. I think there's also something called an UTMA, a UTMA.
It's still accounts held in the name of the minor. Yeah, there's UGMA and UTMA. They're both custodial accounts held in the name of the minor, but controlled by a parent or other relative until the child reaches the age of majority in your state.
There it is.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. So it does not have to be a 529 or bust. It could be an ABCDEFG if you want.
There it is. Perfect. So the sixth baby step is to pay off your mortgage as fast as possible. And I actually agree with this one in some aspects.
I gave this to you for a reason. I want to hear all the...
I agree with it in some aspects. Your housing situation is going to be traditionally the largest portion of your budget. And so paying off that and getting that out of your hair with the extra money that you have left over each month is probably a good idea. However, much like V said in the last baby step, this ideology is linear. The idea that you have to own a home is like remarkably antiquated. And this is coming from somebody who absolutely wants to own a home again in their own life. If you look at the cost, and we've done a breakdown of this, if you look at the cost to own a home, your mortgage is the floor. You have to pay more than that monthly to upkeep your home, to do all of the other X, Y, and Z that come along with that, right? Sometimes renting is the right move for people. And baby step 6 does not even come close to addressing that. And if you look, okay, so let's say your rent is $2,000 a month, which is really high rent. But if it is, right, yeah, welcome to Colorado or California. If that's your rent, right, you're paying $24,000 a year in rent, correct? Let's do that for 10 years. That's $240,000. Let's do that for 20 years. That's $480,000. So you've lived in a home for 20 years for $480,000 spent, okay? Sure, you don't have equity, but maybe you've been investing that whole time in a Roth IRA. Or maybe you've been investing in your own brokerage account. Or maybe you used Vee's stash code and have been investing in something else, right? You've been doing other financial decisions or making other financial decisions that have been valuable to you. And you've spent $480,000 on rent. Yes, but that's it. You didn't have to pay for the roof getting repaired or the water heater exploding or needing to retile the bathroom or needing to get new appliances or needing to repipe your entire water system because it exploded in the cold one morning. Like, there are so many different things that renting versus home owning provides. And DR, unfortunately, is just very linear in his idea that you should pay off a mortgage. Now, the other flip side of that is if you have a rental property, and you should totally listen to our episode about buying our first rental property, which was a lot of fun, but also like very eye-opening in the ways that like the rental market works and things you can and can't do or things you should and shouldn't do as a slumlord. But even that, like, I wouldn't pay off that home immediately because like that's not the point of like a rental investment. So it's just very like it's just a very like one track idea, which again has made Dave Ramsey tons of money being one track, but he just leaves out everybody on the margins. Not that real estate investors are on the margins. Like, I hate going on Twitter because real estate investors are so absolutely gross at times. But like the people on the margins who choose to rent instead of own a home, or who choose to, live flexibly and move every few years because they want to travel or something. He just leaves them out. It's just very, very like linear, misogynistic thinking, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and I just realized that I forgot one of the baby steps, which is 3B, to save for your down payment for your house. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
So baby step number 1, you save $1,000. Number 2, you pay off all your debt for several years. Number 3, you save 3 to 6 months worth of emergency fund for a year again, or probably longer. And then after that, 3B, if you want to buy a house, you're going to save your down payment. Now, a 20% down payment on a $500,000 house is $100,000. Good luck doing that in 5 years. And then all of a sudden, then you invest.
You get to invest 15 years later. How lucky.
Oh, man. So, yeah, the mortgage one I've always thought was interesting. I do understand the concept that when you get to retirement, if you have a paid off home, now your expenses decrease.
Yeah.
So you can live off of less money. I think that that's a great concept if you buy a house at age 30 and then you have a paid off house by age 60. But how many people are buying houses at age 30?
I also think, like, especially given today's circumstances in the housing market, it's just the further you grow up the baby steps, like the more privileged and out of touch and unrealistic it becomes. Like, so here in Colorado, literally a shoebox, 800 square feet, which is smaller than the apartment that we pay for $2,000 a month, goes for $600,000 in the market. And they're bought up by real estate investors or companies in cash, in full. So it's like, the more you talk about this stuff, like save up down payment for a house, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's just laughable. That's never going to happen, especially for people that make under $100,000 a year, which I'm sorry to tell you guys, if I'm the first one to tell you, but the majority of people in America don't make that kind of money. So who is this advice really for, Dave?
Yeah. I was looking at a realtor that I follow from my hometown, my hometown, the area. And he's a great guy, and he's working really hard to build his brand, and I absolutely love everything he's doing. But he sold a home recently for someone for $1.25 million, and they had multiple all-cash offers, which is absolutely bananas to me. Like, that is a reason that we had to move away from home, because there is a massive price surge like that that's happening that eventually would have phased us out. It's really, really, really unfortunate what it's doing to the community there, because I think that we're going to see a huge change in the demographic of folks that live there, which is really unfortunate.
I keep seeing people on Instagram, like Marilee from Easy Budget was saying, we've been saving for this goal for years. Say it was $450,000 home or whatever. You've been saving for years and years and years for this 20% down payment on a home that was going to be about $450,000. And all of a sudden, that home, that $450,000 home, is now $600,000 or $650,000. And so your 20% down payment is now not even what it needs to be. And so it's just breaking the hearts of all of the millennials who are now saying, you know what, maybe I'm not going to have kids. Maybe I'm not going to buy a house. Maybe we're not going to go to college. Maybe we're going to do things way differently than Dave Ramsey recommends, or the generations before us, because we are the ones who are getting fucked. It's us now. And thankfully, there's Gen Z behind us who probably, hopefully, I hope they're watching and they make different decisions.
Have you seen what those kids are doing? They're like making tons of money as like YouTubers and living in lofts together because nobody can afford a home, and they realize that the American dream is totally smashed, and they might as well just enjoy what they're doing while they're doing it.
Well, there you go.
Like, they're like, I for all of my gripes about like the younger generation and like some of the different things they do that make absolutely no sense to me, they have figured out the game. They have figured out that, like, wait a minute, thank you, millennials, for showing us that absolutely everything is burning to the ground, and there's absolutely nothing to look forward to unless things change at a systemic level. So until they do, we're just going to enjoy this. It's a trip, man. It's a trip.
And I love it. Every time I post about that shit online, oh my God, the trolls. It's just like, dude, it's okay to admit that your shit doesn't work. Like, it's okay.
How dare you not want a house, Vee? How dare you not want children?
That's the thing. Like,
you're not even American.
Yeah, I know. Descent is American, so fuck you. Descent is patriotic, which should be my tagline. No, I mean, I would love to own a house, but I know that I can't own a home here
Yeah.
in Colorado.
Yeah.
Like we'd have to move to Wisconsin or somewhere that doesn't have the cost of living of somebody that makes $200,000 a year. Like
Crazy.
I think we made almost $100,000 a year, and we're still like barely making it in Colorado. Like a follower asked me, how can you afford to live in Colorado? And the answer is I have Joe's income. I couldn't live here by myself. There'd be no way. So I think that his housing advice it's just straight garbage. And you have, I hate to be this person, but YOLO, you only got one life. Don't spend 10 years saving up a down payment that's going to be irrelevant anyway. Like, if you don't want it, and if the housing market is going to fuck you up anyway, like, you don't have to have a home to be successful. You're still valid as an adult if you rent. It's fine. Like, calm down. You're still valid as a woman if you don't want children. Like, your whole life doesn't have to be measured by these stupid milestones the society has put in front of us to make money off our backs.
Yeah, particularly women as well.
Yes.
Like
It's great.
we put all of those milestones on women and just allowed guys to like skate by, and women generally just sacrifice absolutely everything.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's why we have, men like you or folks
Ooh.
like you, not even gendered, just and to your point, I love the younger generation. They're just saying, fuck this system. I'm gonna do what I want to do and be happy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is also what I've just decided to do and to preach. So yeah.
There you go.
For sure.
So the last baby step is to live and give like no one else. And this is Justin's like all-time favorite because we're just generous people. Justin in particular, generosity's number 2 of his top 3 values in life.
Yeah.
And to be able to have all this money and give to people sounds like a really great thing, right? But that also comes with a lot of privilege. And when you're at that point where you have all of your ducks in a row, you can pay for yourself and your living expenses, your children if you have them, and all of that. And then you have access to give to people. That's wonderful. But the reality is most people will never live mortgage free. Most people never even get to the point where they have their house paid off.
Mm-hmm.
So to just give money and give money and give money stupidly to things, it just seems unrealistic. Now, we can also change the tune on this and say that you could be giving money at every step. You could be giving money from the beginning in small portions. It doesn't have to be outrageous generosity. It could be $5 to your friends, I don't know, GoFundMe or whatever. And you could do it throughout the time. But when I heard Dave Ramsey talking about this, it sounded as if you wait till you get to this point and then you give all your money. And when you're at this point, then you can just be super generous. So are you just ungenerous for the first 6 of the 7 steps and you don't give anything? That's kind of what I took from it.
I also don't like the idea that money has to be tied to altruism. I find that giving your time, which is the most valuable resource that any of us have, our time and our passion is way more valuable and impactful than just throwing money. Because if money solved everything, like if just throwing money solved everything, we'd be in a much different place as a society. And I also, like you, Haley, I don't like the fact that like you have to wait 20 years to like be a good person and like give to people. That just seems really dumb to me. I feel like if you want to make an impact in your community, do it now. And if you don't have money to donate to things, do it with your time. And if you don't have a bunch of time, that's okay. Like maybe 3 hours a month, that still matters to these nonprofit organizations and people in your community that are trying to make a difference. And it gets you more involved in your community, in the decision making of your community, and it gives you bigger perspective. Like, your world is small and going out into your community can make it bigger. So yeah, I mean, and I think people in positions of privilege and wealth should absolutely give their money. Well, that's all fine and well with me. But again, like, even owning a home, let alone saving a down payment and paying it off and then being able to give, like, give me a break. Like, just, you don't have to do that. Just, volunteer your time and into organizations that you care about.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing too is the only thing he really talks about giving throughout the baby steps is tithing to the church, which is totally okay if you're a religious person and you want to do that. Um, but again, it just kind of speaks to where his value system is with certain things. And then particularly when you look at some of the grifter Christian pastors that he's supported and talked about, and the amount that they are abusing their powers and, essentially stealing from their congregation is pretty gross. So, like he had one pastor on, I think it was Greg Locke maybe, who just like absolutely like messed around on his wife or something, just like totally did not live up to the standard that he was trying to preach. And it's always so funny to me when ministers do stuff like that, because it's like, you like what like somebody's been giving you their money, supporting you as the speaker of the word, and like that's what you do. It's just it's so gross to me. It's so gross when there's other people who actually, this is kind of a side tangent, but one of my bosses, my first ever boss, he's just awesome. He was like 20 plus years sober, and found sobriety through AA, which obviously has a deeper connection to faith. And he owned the ice cream business, and we also did like breakfast and stuff, so he couldn't go to church on Sundays. And he would just like walk around in the back and play his guitar, because he used to be like in a rock band, and he still actually is in a rock band. And so he was, he was like hitting it pretty hard back when he was a young teen, and that's kind of what helped him clean up. But he would just like play music, and he would say like, my connection to God and through my faith is through music. I don't have to go to church to have a relationship with God. Do I like going to church? Sure. Like, do I enjoy, worship and stuff like that? Yeah, absolutely. He's like, but I can just worship by playing one of the songs that I've written, or just like talking to God like he's a friend. So yeah, that's always interested me, that Dave Ramsey is like, you better give to the church. Like, you better give to the church throughout all of this, no matter how broke you are. And you're like, wait, what? I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I got a lot of gripes with it all.
Give to the church the whole time, but don't give to yourself until 8 years in when you have.
Because God's got you, brother.
Until you have all of your ducks in a row, and that's just not.
I've always
realistic.
Yeah, it's not realistic, and I'm not a Christian. I haven't been Christian for a very long time, but like, God helps those who helps themselves. Like, you should probably get your shit together before you tithe $800 a month to the church and you're living on beans and rice. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Seriously.
Got to support yourself first before you can support anyone else. And Dave even says that. So there you go. Backwards logic, yo.
Yeah. Put on your mask or whatever.
All right. So if you are new here and this is your first episode listening, we don't like Dave Ramsey as a person because of many different things. And you can go back and listen to any of our episodes that have Dave Ramsey in the title and kind of figure out why. I mean, besides anything before episode 30 is when we were pro Dave Ramsey. But after that is revamped new version of ourselves. But this is a breakdown of why we think his advice is outdated. We have our opinions on him as a person, but this is his advice that he's telling millions of people daily to follow, that was written 30 plus years ago, and it's just not applicable to modern day people, and it should be revised, or at least look at it through a different lens. You don't have to follow this like it is the word, and you have to do it in order or you will die. Because I remember thinking like, if we pay off this debt before this debt, this isn't what the plan said, and feeling bad about it. And the moral of the story here is to do what's best for you and your situation and what you feel comfortable with. And if you're following the rules of some man because he told you so and you don't feel good about it, or you feel really bad if you go kind of off track, then that should be a warning and a red flag in itself, that you should look at this from a different lens.
Yep.
I agree completely. Yep.
So, Vee, we get to chat with you a couple more times this spring break. What a fun way to spend my spring break.
Talking about Dave. Yeah,
so
talking
exciting.
about Dave. I'm dancing with a ruler. I'm such a teacher.
Oh, that's great. Well, Vee, thank you for spending time with us this Saturday morning.
It's Saturday.
Saturday. I'm already in like spring break mode. I'm like ready to just party.
I don't know what day it is.
Someday
I'm really excited about being able to actually talk to you guys for multiple times this week, since we haven't really in a couple of months. It's going to be great. but yeah, these conversations always just light my soul on fire, just because I just remember being like in the community from like 2016 to 2018, and it was like, if you say one bad word about Dave Ramsey, you're going to hell. Like, you don't follow the plan, you're a piece of shit, and I love talking about how dumb all of that is now. So I'm thrilled to be here and can't wait to come back.
Woo! Well, thank you again, and we will see you again in a couple days.
Sounds good.
Bye, Vee.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Price of Avocado Toast. If you vibed with this episode, share it with a friend that you're comfortable having money talks with. And if you don't mind, we'd love if you could rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you're in need of my support as a financial coach, message me on Instagram. I'd love to help in any way that I can. Until next time.